On the day. Hey, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Street Therapy KC live here in Kansas City, Missouri on KUAW Radio. Yeah, you hear that? The echo, the echo. It's a big echo. Yeah, yeah. All right. All right. We are good. All right, so listen, hey, we had a good show today. I reached out to a lot of folks that I felt like that could add to the conversation today. With so much going on in our society, dealing with the death of um, a lot of folks. Man, shoot, I'm at a loss for words. Just the folks, Floyd and Arbery and things like that, dealing with COVID-19, dealing with social distancing, dealing with rioting and and things like that, dealing with President Trump talking, saying what he's saying about just the whole gamut of shooting folks and things like that. So I reached out to some folks today. Like I said, I felt that they could add to the conversation. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce them to everyone here. So I'm going to start off with Dr. Naomi Shepherd. She's no stranger to the show. She's been here before. She's a trained therapist and a counselor. I've had her on. The last time we spoke, Doctor, was when the shooting was down in El Paso. So that was the last time we spoke. So how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for inviting me again. I
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
Absolutely, thank you. And also, we'll introduce Mrs. Lisa B. Cooper to the show. She is an anti-racism coach with Winning Diversity and Inclusion Truth International. Also, she studied at Cornell University. How are you, Miss Lisa? Oh, we don't. I don't hear you.
Okay, great. I'm
Now
sorry, I was muted,
you're
but thank you.
muted.
Hi. Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And also, we got Mr. Corey Bill. He is president and CEO of CTB Financial and CEO at Rekindle Dream. Studied social psychology at Tennessee State. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, man. I can't complain. I'm gonna have to update my bio.
Okay. You want to add to it?
Oh, for sure, man. I just started Onyx Capital Financial Solutions. I basically became a bank.
Gotcha.
Where I could get folks set up, small business loans, real estate, commercial, you name it. I got access to 25,000 to 500 million.
There you go. Nice, nice. So then I'm glad that you're on. One of the reasons I am glad you're on the show. But let's go ahead and jump into it. We'll do about maybe half an hour, and then we'll take a break here, and then we'll reset the show and come back in for the other half of the show. So I guess we'll start off with since we're dealing with a lot of the whole racism situation. I'd like to start off with Dr. With Lisa Cooper, since that's kind of your field. What she smiled like, what do you see going on? It's the age old, old. I won't say old man, but the age old thing that just won't die or get better. What do you say to that?
Well, one, let me say that I'm actually Lisa Benson Cooper. So I worked in Kansas City at Channel 41 News for upwards of 14 years, and I was released from Channel 41 News for sharing an article on Facebook, social media, entitled about white tears, white women using their racial privilege to silence women of color. So that's the reason I kind of got into this space, and I founded my company, Winning Truth International, to do diversity, inclusion, anti-racism training, because when that happened to me, I was in a place where I didn't really realize what was going on. I didn't understand what I'd done wrong, because I'd worked in television news for more than 20 years, to where we always categorize people of color, whether that's the Black community, the Hispanic community, Asians, into groups. And we talked about them within their group. So it was surprising to me that I was not only punished, suspended, but ultimately let go because I dared to group white people. Well, I didn't even do it. Honestly, I read an article, I found interest in the article, and I shared it on social media, my Facebook page. And so I did not understand it. I was like, fully taken aback by it. And so that's what put me on this little trajectory, if you will, of trying to figure out what had just happened to me. And that would have been in May of 2018.
Yeah.
And so now you fast forward to now June of 2020, and I clearly know what happened to me. The reality of institutionalized racism, the reality of systemic oppression, the reality of implicit biases is what happened to me that day.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what showed up in the federal courtroom. So to ask you about, to answer your question in regards to race relations,
Yeah.
the reality is we're now seeing play out on YouTube, on Facebook, and our social media platforms what's always been going on
Yeah.
in our neighborhoods, in our homes, in the office suites, in the boardroom.
Yeah.
We're just watching it play out live. And I do think we've gotten to a place to where it's really coming to a head where the frustrations are. And I do believe COVID-19 exacerbated that because people are already frustrated. They're
No doubt.
already losing income. They're already losing their jobs. And so then on top of that, you
Yeah.
sit there and watch a man's life being drained from his body and not so much as a movement.
Right.
And so it is very frustrating because I believe that you see these protests across our city, across our state,
Yeah.
across our nation, and even in the world right now. They're not for George Floyd.
Mhm.
These folks are protesting for people they know too,
Mhm.
okay? Because everyone knows people who have had very negative interactions with police.
Yes.
And even though we are, again, outraged by what we saw with George Floyd in Minneapolis, I promise you there are some murders right here in Kansas City that have gone unsolved. There are some police brutality right here in Kansas City I know of that
Yeah.
there are a lot of questions in the families. They're still looking for answers. And
Yeah.
we're talking about the murders, people who've been killed.
Yeah.
We're not even talking about the attempted murders, the
Mm.
people who have been beaten beyond recognition, beaten
Yeah.
to the place where they can't even hold jobs right now because of their interactions with the very people we're seeing on a national front is indicative as to what we are seeing in our homes and our neighborhoods every day.
Yeah.
And people are using this as an outlet.
Absolutely. Yeah, folks are tired. Folks are tired of being bundled up in the house. Folks are tired of being oppressed. Folks are tired of getting, just the whole gambit. So I totally agree with that. So Dr. Naomi, from a psychological perspective, being cooped up in the house and having everything, it's almost like as soon as we get out just a little bit, boom, we're bombarded with death from someone that looks like us. How does that play into the mentality or the psyche of someone that's already basically it's in a bad position with no job in many cases? Dr. Naomi. Are you
Okay.
Oh, there you
Yeah,
go.
better. Okay. We're dealing with chronic discrimination.
Yeah.
It's continuously happening. So this impacts you physically and mentally,
Yeah.
which causes anxiety, depression, and even to the point of psychosis.
Mm.
And when you're bottled up in the home, first of all, you're bottled up in the home. You're watching television, and all you see is information about coronavirus.
Yeah.
And now, on top of that, now we're dealing with a situation of discrimination,
Absolutely.
homicide.
Yeah.
So that impacts us, and now we have a reaction.
Yeah.
And how we have been carrying on since the coronavirus, now we have to deal with another element of it. And now this is the anger and the frustration and the sadness of coronavirus and the discrimination that's been bottled up. Now everybody's out reacting to that.
Yeah, it's like the perfect storm.
Exactly.
it's like you got this on top of this on top of this on top of this, and everybody's like, okay,
Yes.
enough's enough.
Right.
Hands up.
Yeah, and so these other reactions that you're seeing is due to it is being at home constantly and not being able to get out. Everyone is equipped to be out socializing. That's what we are. We can't make it without each other.
No.
We can't make it in the world by ourselves. That's not the way we were made. So with that problem right there, and then now you have this situation with homicide, and it's continual.
Yeah.
And this is what I was thinking about when all this has been occurring. I see a lot of times with the shootings, right? They don't just shoot one time, 2 times, 3 times. They shoot like 40 times at one time.
Yeah.
Do you know what I equate that to? I look at the video games that the kids are playing.
Yeah.
That's how they shoot. And that's, to me, like a part that's missing with the police officers. I think they should ask them, hey, do you play video games or do you play PlayStation? And all of that plays into, I'm looking at the way they go around, like the one young lady that was babysitting her nephew and the guy, that's what they, and that's what they're doing. They're just out just shooting us. Like first is racism, and then it's the games, and they overstimulate. So they get out there, and that's what they do. They impact us.
Yeah, and me, even with that, it's like overkill. It's like, okay, you shot once in the head or shot a few times in the body, but to sit there and to literally unload on somebody and then reload and unload again, that's hate. That is pure and simple hate. That that is something that you just I don't know. That's pure hate. My man Corey, what are your thoughts on that as a black man, but also in your profession, brother? What do you see?
I think we lost him.
Oh, he's not there.
I don't see him on.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we'll continue the conversation until I guess he jumps back in here. But yeah, that's kind of my thought. It's traumatic, and it's we say you hear the things that well, you guys didn't go through, lynching and things like that, so kind of get over the past, or it really doesn't bother you. Well, when you got something like this happen, you got millions of people through social media. It's almost like it's sending a clear message of, don't mess with me, or this is what we'll do to you. What are your thoughts on that?
I do believe that, unfortunately, that's where the dialogue goes. When you talk about the trauma of, we're not talking about just slavery. We're talking about slavery. We're talking about Jim Crow. We're talking about the current criminal justice system. We are talking about the trauma on the black family, the trauma on the black man, all of the realities of what we are dealing with in 2020 this day. So it's really honestly foolish and definitely unfair to talk about where you were never a slave. So why does that have anything to do with you? It absolutely has everything, because we're not that far removed, one, from slavery. We're definitely from Jim Crow, and we're definitely not removed from mass incarceration. We are dealing in a society to where, as we know, we have police officers and people who take normal citizens who take the lives of black men, black boys, black women, who don't spend a week in jail. Whereas we know of black men, again, in our own communities who have sold weed and spent decades in prison for selling weed. And so to say that we are no longer impacted by racism or the reality of this slave system, reality of Jim Crow, is not true. We are absolutely seeing a grown-up version, a more mature version of that very same system before us this day, which is why we can see the reality of what we're seeing right now rioting in the streets. I don't believe it's just about, obviously it's not just about George Floyd. It's about Tamir Rice. It's about Breonna Taylor. It's about all of these inequities. Because ironically, they're supposed to be here to protect and serve. And so if we don't even have that baseline foundation, then where do we go from here? So where do we go as a community of people to say, hey, we need protection too, when those who are hired funding to protect and serve are absolutely one of the primary aggressors against us.
And I agree. Something went wrong with the psychological evaluation of some of these officers that are being hired. There's something going on. They're not catching something.
I agree with that. I agree with that, but I also think that we as a community, as a society, we are so uncomfortable talking about race. One, when you talk about cross-racial relationships, when you talk about black people interfacing with white folks about race, it becomes code word. I mean, I think any person of color has been in a situation in a community social space, rather than say they're white, they'll do that thing where you like rub on your palm to let them know that they're not one of us. We do that, but we need to stop that. We need to have real, honest conversations about race so we can move the conversation forward, and we get to the place where we're all working towards the same end. But because we're so uncomfortable when it talks about race, then we're not even willing to talk about our own unconscious biases, our own implicit biases. We're not willing to talk about the microaggressions that show up in the workspace as to why I can sit 14 years at Channel 41 News and still not be good enough to get off weekends by the time I was fired in May of 2018. I couldn't even get off weekends, but I was good enough for a contract after contract after contract. But I was good enough to cover the inauguration of Barack Obama, but I couldn't quite get off them darn weekends. Okay, what is that? we need to start talking about that. We need to be having real conversations about what we're seeing in race relations in the hopes of fixing it. Because unfortunately, what we're seeing here is tragic. It won't just be, unfortunately, George Floyd's life on the line. We know the other people will be killed and maimed by the time we get through this. That is the sad truth. So we have to get to the place where we're all working towards the fix versus the cover up. Because truth be told, we're all complicit in the cover up when it talks about the reality of race relations and racial inequities in this country.
You know, that you, like you said, I mean, well said, like you said, that is just the sad part. You know, you sit there and you watch it, it's like this reoccurring thing you watch over and over and over and over again. And it's like, you know, how do you police the police? You know, the police are the one that you call to help. You know, and I mean, if it was an outside source or whatever the case, then I guess the conversation would be a little different. Then we could go to the law to take care of the injustice. But what if it's the law doing the injustice? It's like, well, give me a break. But you know, and like you said, it's not just, you know, Mr. Floyd. You know, it's Mr. Floyd, it's Ahmaud, it's the sister that was, you know, with her boyfriend at the house. It's, you
Breonna
know,
Taylor.
It's Breonna Taylor. It's
Yes.
You know, I mean, it's Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman still walking free.
Tamir Rice,
you know, with the gun out.
It's the chef that just got murdered by the National Guard in Louisville last night.
Yep, it's the system, brother. So Corey, man, what are you feeling on that, brother?
You know, man, I don't say this to brag. You know, I'm just a student of Black history.
Yes,
and
sir.
when I look at this history period,
Yeah.
when I see what's going on right now, man, this is to me what it sums up. It sums up that Black folk in America has seemed to forget their history, but we also forgave their history. So when we're forgiven of their history, we think we just think, we can't curse on here, can I? I just want to make sure you know. Okay.
I'm glad you asked.
I will go in. Yeah. Unfortunately, man, we just got comfortable. We got comfortable. We got lured to sleep.
Yeah.
We don't understand that white supremacy never go to sleep. It's just zigzag. Yeah.
It's a system.
When you think we take 2 steps forward while we sleep, it's going to take another 7 steps, push us backwards. And we just, you know, ultimately, man, I have a different take on everything, right? I'm more controversial in my mind.
Yeah, come on.
You know, and I have no problem, you know, explaining myself. But to me, this is Black America karma.
Okay. What do you mean?
It's not white America karma. This is Black America karma. This is our karma for being too lax.
Okay.
This is our karma for not unifying. This is our karma for not being a monolith. Okay. We know their nature. We've seen the history. We read the history. We know they destroyed civilizations, and yet and still, we want to force ourselves into a place where we're no longer welcome. That's our fault.
Gotcha.
I think in order for us to claim accountability and to be progressive in our movement, it's not to continuously point the fingers. I understand that we got fired from the Emancipation Proclamation. I know we wasn't freed. You know what I'm saying? I understand that our race definitely need healing. You know, I'm one of the main persons who started 3-4 years ago that started at mental health is needed. Yeah. I started a hashtag. I've been trying to say mental health is sexy for a while. Yeah. That's our fault because we believe the narratives that go against why we need mental health therapy. So at some point we need to look in the mirror and say, we're the common denominator.
Yeah.
Right.
So you know, what
we'll be so quick to tell somebody else that.
Right. No doubt.
So at some point we have to look in the mirror and say, what are we as a collective doing wrong? Yeah. And can we go on a 10 or 15 year run with the resources that we have, with the monies that we have in our community?
Sure.
Can we go on a good 10, 15 year run that was very similar to the Reconstruction period?
Yeah.
But when we had a good 10, 15 years, we was building our own cities. We was creating our own towns. We was governing ourselves accordingly. Yeah. Right? We understood what our skill sets were from slavery. That was the silver lining of slavery. We picked up some great skill sets during that time. Right. And if it wasn't for that bogus agreement between the Democratic Party, who wanted their president in office, and the way they got their president in office was to bribe the Republicans and say, hey, they told the Republicans, if you want this guy in office, pull your military. And And once we lost military backing after the Reconstruction period ended, that's what Jim Crow came into play. But if we understand what we did, because we was a monolith during Reconstruction.
Right.
We was a monolith. We had one code, one accord. We got to get back to that.
Yeah.
But we're refusing to get back to that because the insecure people, insecure race always have something to prove. So we're quick to say, I'm not a monolith. I'm not this, because we don't know our identity.
Right.
We refuse to do the things that's going to propel us to get to the next level. We have to face that first. And any mental health therapist will tell you that once you become self-aware of what's going on, that's the first step. And that is the biggest step we are refusing to do.
Yeah.
And until we address that elephant in the room, we're going to keep having the Trayvon Martins, the Breonna Taylors. We know that the police officers ain't nothing but the updated version of buck breakers. You know what I'm saying? We know they ain't nothing but still slave holders. We know that. We know that. But since we're not a well-read race, since we don't follow our history, you know, we can't have conversation and say, hey, you read that book called The Spook that sat next to the door when we infiltrated? Like, you would think we would infiltrate police.
Sure.
If we, you know, we don't want to be police officers. They ain't good for us, man. You know, the hell with being a police officer. I'm not going to do all that. And then the Klansmen go do it. And now we cry wolf. Like,
there you go. I agree.
You left the door wide open, so they walk right in there.
Exactly.
Walk right up in there, and then we complain. Then we sit back and complain. Listen here, I'm gonna say this. I'm a former athlete. I used to play ball, right? And when you got the good basketball and you go to the hood and hoop, when you take your loss, you taking your ball.
Yeah.
Right, they gonna play with the raggedy ball. You know what I'm saying? Because you know,
you mad.
The minute you leave your ball, you ain't gonna never see that ball again. Because 9 times out of 10, your best friend is probably a little soft, right? He probably ain't tough. And somebody gonna bully him and take that ball.
Take your ball,
Hey, you talking to a bully. Hey, bro, you ain't going home with that ball no more. Run that. Right? So that's exactly what's happening now.
And I think
but we don't want to address that. So that's what I think was going on until we address that, until we are willing to do what's called the shadow work. Then we could get the ball rolling. But the ball ain't going to be rolling as long as we're pointing the fingers. And that's my issue. We can't force them to see us as being human. We just can't.
I hear you.
Right, and the same thing goes for voting. We have given up those rights too.
Absolutely. Like, we shoot ourselves in the foot. And then we don't have, you know what, like, here I go. I'm so silly, right? This is how I think. Like, I study history. I said, when you looked at the Civil War, it wasn't that the Northerners didn't want slavery. They just wanted to treat the slaves nice. Like, hey, wait a minute. They giving all this free labor. They taking care of us. You know what I'm saying? Big Mama do take care of little Becky. Hey, we don't want to mess them up. So let's be nice to them. The Southerners was like, no, we want that. They're gonna have all the smoke. So they went to war over an ideology. Until they realized too many of it was being destroyed. We as a race, we haven't had our Civil War. We have not had a sector of black folk say, you know what, I'm not fooling with them. I'm not dealing with them. They are not stepping up to the plate. They are promoting the stereotype. They're going to continuously keeping us down. We still trying to intertwine with people who bring us down. And until we remove ourselves from them. So we had 2 wars. We had war with white supremacy and we had war with black entitlement. And these are the things that's not being discussed. So that's why I actually pulled myself away from this movement, because I used to be hardcore 2012, 2013, 2014. I mean, hardcore. To like, you don't even understand. Till I realized we ain't gonna do nothing.
Well, Lisa, I see. Look like your wheels are turning up there, Lisa. What are your thoughts on
No,
that?
no, I definitely agree with some of the points, but I also think it's important to remember that the slave game was a labor game. Okay, so it
Absolutely.
wasn't an ideology game. The idea is they wanted the free labor,
Right.
and when you think about the bucking of the North and the South, understand that the South had a vetted interest in keeping that labor in play, whereas the North was not quite as
Absolutely.
vested at that point.
Right.
So I think that's also true. That's also true now for mass incarceration. It's still a labor game. It is still part of the game in keeping Black bodies, Black men, Black people, people of color in jail, incarcerated. It's still a labor game.
Yeah.
And so I do agree. There has to be more work togetherness in regards to people of color, Black people specifically, in trying to, I guess, move towards our own liberation in our minds, bodies, and spirits, because some of the not knowing is also intentional. When you think about, honestly, Black Wall Street, I don't know how old you guys are, but I didn't learn about Black Wall Street when I was in school. I didn't learn about when I was in middle school, when I was in high school, none of that. Right. I didn't learn about, truth be told, financial literacy until I sought that information. So we also have to be mindful of the public education.
That's why I got in the industry for that.
Yeah, the public education system.
I didn't mean to go through going there. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just the public education system is also part of the problem, but there's also no way to hijack that money. If we're going to go with the theory that all kids, who are my kids including, are in this public education system based on state and federal dollars, there's a backpack of money attached to my kids too. If I chose to pull my kids out of this system because I believe that this education is actually teaching my Black boys to be inferior to the white counterparts, those backpacks of money don't come with me. And so there still needs to be some work being done as far as trying to infuse the same resources that the majority gets to take advantage of into people who want to do better, who want to find a way in which we can empower communities of color to act on their own behalf. And I also believe, just like when you talk about Black Wall Street, there is a force that we either choose not to see or pretend like we don't see that is working against that. There is absolutely a force, and there is a conditioning that's working against people of color, Black people, Black communities being self-sufficient. Because understand, it is still a labor game. We still need somebody on that fry rack. We still need somebody picking up that trash. And that is still part of the system in which we are a part of. And so don't get me wrong, I agree with you, Mr. Beal, in regards to what you're saying, but I also believe the forces that be are greater than most people realize. And making sure there's always got to be someone at the bottom of this racial hierarchy, of this racial arrangement. And unfortunately, Black people have been and continue to be at the very bottom. Even those who try to climb their way to the top will tell you that climb is very, very difficult, because the system that we live in protects that racial hierarchy, that racial construct that we're all a part of and we're born into.
Yeah, well said on both.
Absolutely, I don't disagree with that at all. I just still believe that it's strength in numbers, right? And I believe that if we do, like I said, become a monolith, I don't care what we agree on. It's gonna be three things that the Black community say, hey, for the next 10 years, this is what we're working on. Right. And we just focus on working on that. Because in today's time and social media, think about it. This is what Malcolm X was attempting to do when he wanted to get the United Nations involved. Like, hey, wait a minute, look what's going on. Well, guess what our United Nations is? The cell phone we have in our hand. It's global. They make America look very, very ugly, right? Yeah. And not only that, I hope we got way more John Thomases than Harriet Tubman could imagine, right? Because it is some white folk that say, you know what? I understand I'm privileged. I had no idea we got it like this, and that I'm not flying with that. And we do have many of them that want to step up to the front line as well and be our allies. The reason why, because we have social media. Now, how do we build on that momentum? How do we keep it pushing? We become a monolith. Like if you guys familiar with Dr. Claude Anderson, he already gave us the blueprint in Powernomics. He told us what to do at Powernomics. He held at the time one of the highest positions within the White House cabinet. He has some relevance. His words should matter. He put a plan together for us. He wrote 2 books that underscore white supremacy: Powernomics, Black Labor, White Wealth. Right? It is there. The issue that I'm always running into is this. And I give an example, you guys. I put it on Facebook the other day, right? I said, I don't want no bullseyes. I don't want no hundreds. I don't want no that's the truth. no facts, right? It's a good chance that if we get this movement started, we may not see the fruit of our labor, which many of us want because we ego driven. We want the attaboys to pat on the backs for doing the work for our next generations.
Right.
If you're serious about doing this work, put the black fists up and let's get started. Because I have his telephone number. Well, I was gonna call him and get him on, to do a virtual seminar.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think we lost your voice. I don't know. Hey, brother Corey. I think we lost your voice. I can see you talking. Oh, did he? Okay, yeah. Can you ladies hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, your computer looked like it froze up there, brother Corey. But just chime in when we can hear you. But no, no, and I don't mean to cut you off if you're still talking, but just let me know if we can jump back in because I think your feed kind of locked up there. But no, he's saying something that is very poignant. You have to, galvanize. And in fact, hold on for a second. Let's take a break here real quick. We are about to have the 4:30 hour, so we'll take a quick break here. They have to log back in. Okay. Yeah, we'll take a quick break here and we'll log out, but then we'll log back in at the half an hour. Then it'll reset the show. Is that okay?
Okay.
All right. Yeah, you listen. You're tuned in to Street Therapy, KUAW Radio. If you want to give us a call, 816-599-6893, 816-599-6893, or KUAW.org. Listen, we're having a conversation talking about race relations, inclusion. Where do we go from here? What's our next step? We understand that, folks are upset, mad, and frustrated, but how do we galvanize on that movement? Not just making a moment, but making a movement. How do we grab that and hold on to it and not let go? How do we laser pinpoint where we need to go as opposed to being scattered all over the place? How do we create one agenda, one focus, get everybody together and focus on that? So that's what we're talking about right now. We'll come back here on the other side of the break. Be right back in just a moment. Thank you.